There we are. Let's go. Woo! All right. Next to you. Happy
We just jump
Tuesday. I
in. This
love it.
is
It's
Happy
we got to
Tuesday.
figure it out. Like there, yeah. There's no host. We're it's both of us.
Yeah, I've been trying to push for this with Tanya. I always with the other room tilter Tanya. I like just like coming in because you know what? It's a
You know,
conversation,
this
and
is
let's get
life.
started.
This is
Yeah.
life, Iris. There's no planning how things are going to go. We got to jump right in. Yeah. Happy Transformation Tuesday, everyone. Iris, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I think surviving the summer. I told you, having kids home, uh, and trying to figure out how to keep them occupied. They've been in their pajamas all day. This is, having them come in and out of my office. So that's how my summer is going.
I think it's a great place to start. I think we need to lean into the humanity of the room tilters, right? And it's like we get to, obviously you and I and all the room tilters, we're teaching all of these leadership concepts all of the time, but the reality is like we're living them at the same time, and like we're in the muck, we're in the goo, we got stuff going on. So what does your muck and what's your goo look like right now, Iris?
Oh my gosh, it is. We talked about this too. Is I need all of the mindset tools to reset and focus on what I need to focus on because it's kids, it's chaos and play dates and getting them going during the day, getting myself going, so I think it's that I need all of the mindset tools to be able to focus over the summer. And also, one of the things I'm working on the most, so I appreciate you asking this, is being able to lean into the rest
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
summer because it invites us to like maybe it's time to think about not pushing so hard. So I think about that because that's always a struggle for me. What about
I
you?
love it.
What's the mess of it, the goo of
Yeah, the
it?
goo. I mean, it's a good goo, but it's a goo nonetheless, right? It's I think 14 flights, or actually 11 flights in 14 days, right? And
Oh my
what
goodness.
is that? 6 or 7 different hotel beds, and trying to coordinate. So my wife and my kids are actually at camp right now. My wife is working one of the programs. 2 of my kids are counselors. My youngest is in his last year as a camper. I've got my mother-in-law house sitting for us, watching the dog, right? It's just like it's
That's
this
chaos.
it is. And again, it's waking up in a hotel room in the morning going, okay, wait a second, where am I? Where am I? Oh, I'm in Dallas today. So really
Yeah.
grateful, but yeah, it is. I mean, it's all that mental baggage is a lot to carry around. But great.
Yeah. Can you, before we go into our subject, which is teams, and you have a great title for it, but FC Dallas is behind you. Can you let us know where you are and what you're up to?
Yeah, so I started working with FC Dallas back in May. The head coach I've known for a couple of years now because of the national team, and so they've brought me in. So I come in for about 2 or 3 days once a month to work with the players on the first team and the second team. So I worked with the first team players yesterday. They have a game tonight. We need 3 points. Let's go. And then I came in this morning to work with the second team players. And second team for Americans, I guess the correlation would be kind of like you have your Major League Baseball team and then your AAA minor league team. They're the next guys up. And so I worked with them this morning. And so I work, mindset and team dynamics and leadership skills. And yeah, so it's a lot of fun. And similar work that I do when I'm with the national team. But when I'm with the national team, I'm with them the whole time. Yeah, mindset, leadership, team skills, all that good stuff.
I know we have a subject, but just really quick, if you can do bullet points of like what you covered today with your team.
Yeah, so
just because it's out of curiosity.
Yeah, so working with the second team, these guys tend to be a little bit younger than the first team. So introducing ideas such as even just some breathing techniques to help with focus, to help with presence and regulating ourselves, especially with transitions. We talked about obviously micro habits. How are we building little micro habits on a day-to-day basis? Just can I get a little bit better today, a little bit better today, a little bit better today, and building those micro habits that become sort of our new normal. And then we got into what, Iris, the work that you and I do all the time, over and over, and it never changes, which is, for lack of a better word, I would just call it present moment awareness, and how to continuously bring our attention and our focus back to the present moment, and knowing what to focus on in order to optimize our performance. And so some skills, some mental tools, some ideas, some videos around that today. Yeah.
Be where your feet are,
Be
right?
where your feet are, be where your breath is, because your breath is always in the present moment.
Oh, that's a good one. I'm gonna steal that
Yeah,
one.
please do. Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's good to kind of talk about what you were doing, because I think it translates, right? So this is what we do with my corporate
Yeah.
clients. I just got off with one of my corporate clients. We're talking about being where your feet are, emotional regulation. So it translates. We're human beings and performing, whether we're on the soccer pitch. Is
Yeah.
it the soccer
It is a
pitch?
pitch. Well done.
Or yeah, or it's thank you. That's it. That's all I got. Don't ask me anything else. Or we're performing at work or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think all of these things apply, all of these skills apply.
Yeah. It only ever applies to 100% of your life.
All right. Well, you've got a great title for us today, and I'm going to screw it up. So
That's okay. Well, you came up with the topic area, and then I just gave you a cheesy title, and we're running with it. So today's Transformational Tuesday, of course, on Limitless Live. Hello to everyone. Lane, Martin, regulars in the house. I love it. Thanks for being here, guys. Our title today is the special sauce. Yeah, the special sauce of super teams. The special sauce of super teams. The special sauce of super teams. So Iris, not only, I mean, you're an Olympian, you are a national champion, you're in the Hall of Fame, you are like an elite performer, and now you've moved into coaching people at the corporate level and the sports level and elite level. So you've been a part of a lot of teams. And my work, I wasn't an elite athlete, but I've been able to fake my way into being a part of elite teams. And so we've got a lot of experience sort of being sort of in the, in the shallows, in the hole of great teams, and sort of what that looks like. And so, yeah, I thought it'd be fun to dive into that and some of our experiences with what that looks like.
Well, you came up with a great question, which is an exercise we often use with teams too, just to begin to be aware of when you have been part of a team and it's gone great. If you can think of a great team that you've been on, what were the pieces and parts of the team that you felt like just inspired you, helped you engage with the team, just made the team very cohesive? What was a special sauce, right, for that team? So I think I would invite everyone who's here, even our regulars, just to think about, and you can even put it in the chat, what about your team made it special, made it a great experience, made it so that you guys got to where you wanted to go. And sometimes, even us, when I was training, I was telling you about my experience we had top 12 women in the country training for the 96 Olympic Games. And they were all here together. They didn't win the Olympics. Some of them didn't make the team. So it wasn't really about the outcome. Number one.
Right.
Number one.
Not
the
about
team
the
was
outcome. Yes.
Exactly. We weren't focused on the outcome, but we had a huge mission and vision. We wanted to put the U.S. fencing team on the map. That meant that all of us, if we performed at our best, would put us on the map. It was the time when I became the first world champion of the United States, because I was just inspired by all these people around us. And that's what it meant. We had a huge mission and vision. So clarity of mission and vision, and it wasn't about the outcome.
Yeah, that's huge.
Any of that resonating?
Huge. Yes. And how, I mean, it came up in my team talk today, again, controlling what you can control, and the outcome's not one of them. And so it's such a simple concept, Iris, but it's so difficult to not get distracted with that outcome, with being outcome-based thinking. So for you all, if you reflect back on that experience, that group of 12 of you, like, what did that look like as far as being able to stay process-driven instead of outcome-driven?
Well, I love Caitlin's comment, because it was the devil's in the details with these things. Is everyone brought their whole selves, she said, and the environment fostered that. And I wrote a couple things down, because I think these were the words I had. Is we built a group of people that cared about each other as human beings, not our performance. So our performance didn't dictate whether we belonged to the group or not. We were all valued when we came to the group, and all of our strengths and our weaknesses were valued. And they helped us with those, right? So if our mission was bigger than just the outcome, we weren't competing against each other, although they were
Yeah.
competing for spots.
Yeah.
They all felt like, if you get better, I get better, right? So I'm going to help you with some of your fencing tactics that you're not great at, and you're going to do that for me. We're going to get better together. So having a big mission helped us all be more aligned with helping each other.
That's
That we wanted to help each other. Yeah.
that's huge because I mean I think the question I get asked most, Iris, is how do you go into highly competitive environments and try to convince people to collaborate? And what you're talking about is actually it's like it's a version of the answer I try to explain, and you lived it, which is when you care about each other that much and you genuinely, obviously you want to maximize your performance and you want to maximize your teammates' performance, the competing against one another is actually you're showing up in a way to push them the best that they can become, and they're pushing back to push you to be the best that you can become. So even though you're competing against one another, you're actually collaborating with each other to become the best that you can become, not by taking it easy on one another, but by actually, actually being a difficult resistance, which requires growth.
I think all top athletes know that they're not going to be a top athlete without the competitor,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
I've been watching Last Dance. Like, Michael Jordan isn't Michael Jordan without Scottie Pippen being at his best,
Yeah.
right? Or another Karl Malone at his best, right? So if he can never be pushed to compete, if he was never pushed to be at his best, or someone else was really good, then we were never going to get there. So in fencing, it's very much that way. If I fence someone and they don't have great skills or tactics, they're not going to push me to bring out
Yeah.
my best.
Yeah.
Dig deep, right? So we needed each other to learn and to grow. And so again, I just emphasize that the mission isn't the outcome, but the mission is something greater. And also, we were very entrenched in caring about each other, even to this day. Because that's the other thing. When people talk about great teams, they are still in touch with them,
Yeah.
right? So if you think
Yeah.
about teams that you're on, you're still friends with them. Why? Because you cared about them as a human being, not because of their performance, not what they gave to you at practice. They were there for you. You were there for them, and you shared an experience that was intense. And we still gather, years and years later.
It's that psychological safety piece, right? That
Mhm.
we hear so much about in the corporate world now, but it's the same in the military, it's the same in sports, right? Is that you all were leaning into developing that trust, respect, and value, genuinely caring about each other, and which is when you genuinely care about one another, it's that candid honesty, at,
Yes.
because you're not sugarcoating, you're not worried about sort of stepping on feelings, or you're less concerned about stepping on feelings because you've built up that relationship where you can give candid and honest feedback.
Can you maybe dive into it a little bit more with teams and how you kind of present this? I'm just curious because I think this is a big topic. People, even the last 2 days, I'm working with clients, and I said, "Have you ever told her that she makes you feel this way when
Mhm.
she sends an email like that?"
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
she's my boss. And I'm like, well, if someone was your direct report, wouldn't they want to hear this feedback from you? So that honesty, I think we don't practice it enough. And sometimes you're right, like we need certain environments, we need safety. But I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about like how to help with some of that, because that honesty and that truth is really important.
Yeah, I think one of the big probably misconceptions that, especially when you're working with young leaders, a lot of the time. So working with young athletes, and oh, you're going to be the captain, or I need you to be a leader on the team. And usually, the thing that player thinks like, oh, I'm the one. I have to be hard on my teammates, right? I've got to hold them accountable. I've got to let them know that when they do things wrong. And I think I was kind of raised in that leadership model, and I think it's kind of a common model to raise people in, and it's sort of I try to take the opposite approach. And even today with the session I did with the team, is I started the team off going back to what are our core values, right? What are the core values of the team? Kind of like the guts, it's the stuff. This is who we are, the
Yeah.
core values. And then I had them call out players who have been representing those core values for the last week or two. And so now we're getting peer-to-peer recognition. That's really the starting point, right? When we talk about, building that psychological safety, if we start off with peer-to-peer recognition, when it comes time for me to have to hold you accountable, maybe with negative feedback or critical feedback, it's a whole lot easier to give you that feedback when you're constantly hearing from me how much I trust and respect you as well. And so we when we think about accountability, we usually only think about it in a negative way. I've got to give someone bad news. But what about reaffirming accountability? When I'm constantly saying, "Hey, Iris, like you crushed that report, you crushed that presentation. Hey, the way that you handled that situation, man, that was amazing." And so now if I have to come give you harsh feedback or critical feedback, you're like, well, clearly Travis cares about me. He's always telling me all the good things that I do. And so when I think about that accountability piece and how we can foster getting to that level of honesty, we have to kind of seed the soil with compassion and with recognition at the same time.
I think what I see too, I'll just add on to it, is that we don't have enough human interactions, especially in the Zoom world, and it's
Yeah.
very transactional. So it's very hard for people to assume good intent.
Yeah.
If you and
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of interactions, we don't get to know each other, we can't assume good intent. Like, if you show up to a meeting and you're kind of like this grumpy, I could say, "Oh my gosh, she probably hates how I'm showing up or my glasses." But in truth, if I know you, I'm like, "Oh, I know, last night he had a long night and it was difficult," or,
Yeah.
whatever it is, like I can assume something good and it doesn't have to do with me. So a lot of people, when they're having a lot of transactional nature of the relationship, and not really getting to know each other, it's really hard to assume good intent. And you
Yeah.
need that for those honest conversations. And that's kind of what you're saying is, if I have frequent interactions and my interactions with people aren't just like, you're not doing this and you're not doing that. Like, if those are all the interactions, it's hard to assume good intent. It just feels like I'm not doing anything right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is, how about more interactions? How about like just notice little details? How about having some more frequent interactions with this human being that you're building? Think about how much time with coworkers you're spending.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
A lot of
Yeah.
times more than with your family, right? So you actually have to build intentional relationships with people.
And it's no different, in our personal relationships as well. I mean, again, like my wife and I are going on 27 years this October, and there's times where I might have to go, hey, like I'm like, I'm getting a lot of negative like the imbalance of negative feedback is really high. And here's the great thing, like we're at a point in our relationship, she'll be like, oh, okay, hold on. Yeah, let me check that. Let me check that. All right. And so, but it's true, and it never changes, it never goes away. And now imagine having those relationships with people where you don't have that collateral trust. And so it's funny in this Zoom world, Iris, like, one of the things I try to remind leaders who live on Zoom all the time is, don't forget to bring humanity to your Zoom calls, right? Start off the first 5 or 10 minutes of a Zoom call with the human check-ins, right? Hey, like you and I did. We started off our call today with a human check-in. Like, hey, Iris, what's going on in your world right now?
And I was like, oh my God.
And that's how you build connection. Like, I have a window into, oh wow, Iris has this on her plate right now, her kids and and that I'm on the road and I have all this stuff. We build that trust and value by having, but if we try to breeze right past that because we got all these things to do on our agenda, well, you and I, we never build that extra human connection. And so we just feel like parts in the machine instead of people in the machine.
Yeah, transactional relationships and these Zoom relationships are hard, and we forget. We just forget because we think, oh, we're interacting with someone, so we're creating a connection, but we're just getting through a to-do list.
Yeah.
I did want to ask, because we talked about, I've been talking about The Last Dance for a while, and then we started with Phil Jackson. Yeah. And I wanted to think about, like, how does a leader help to sort of resource the team with what they need in order to be more engaged? Like, how do we how do we be a Phil Jackson, right?
Yeah.
As a leader, what are the special sauce pieces we need to be able to have that type of environment so that the team can thrive?
Yeah, it's funny, working on so many sports teams, I've had awesome examples. I think back to my own personal example of the best team I was ever a part of was a website that I worked for, in the early 2000s, right? This was like my first,
Hey,
real,
2000s
my
website.
first real big job, right? And it was the woman who was our boss, who oversaw the entire organization. She was I loved her. We're still friends to this day. She was this amazing leader. And it was, you talk about, right, we had shared mission and vision. Everyone was on the same board, everyone on the same page. But she was amazing at empowering us, trusting us, and empowering us to kind of have autonomy and to make decisions. And then a few years later, Iris, I read Dan Pink's book Drive, and he talks about
Yes.
what are the three components that humans need in order to be motivated. And it's purpose, autonomy, and mastery, right? Purpose, autonomy, and mastery. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's what she did, right? Our work had purpose to it. We felt we were a part of something. She gave us the freedom, the autonomy to make it our own. And the mastery came with, the job that we were working on, we felt like we were learning something and getting better. And I was like, and we felt like we were a cohesive team that we were doing that. And I look back to that, I'm like, okay, how in this environment, how are we connected with purpose? Do people have a sense of freedom and autonomy? And are they growing? Are they getting better? Are we gaining a sense of mastery? And I think back on that experience, over 20 years ago at this point, I'm like, yeah, she was so far ahead of leadership. And so that was a powerful example for me. I want to surprise you with something, Iris.
Oh, I like surprises.
I want to surprise you with something because I was stalking your website, right? Because this is what I do. It was kind of like, like this. I was like, oh, there's Iris.
And I'm trying to hide.
I dropped out like, oh, what's on there now, right? And so I was stalking your website, and this kind of fits into, I think, the Phil Jackson and the special sauce of great teams. So I'm going to throw it at you, and I want you to go off on it.
Oh boy.
Ubuntu.
Oh yes. I am. Oh my God. Now I'm forgetting it. It's like we are a team because of you, or we are one.
Yeah.
We're only a team because of you, right? Yeah. So something like that. I'm getting it totally wrong.
No, you got it. No, it was on your website. Just when you click on like team, you got Ubuntu, which is one of my favorite sort of words and concepts of all time. Is that idea of we are, right? It's we are one. I am who I am because of you. Because of you.
There it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And we are who we are because of each other. Yeah. And so when you think of like Ubuntu and special sauce, like what does that mean for you?
Well, I actually was thinking about, as a leader, what do I do as a leader, but also I was watching Phil Jackson. And I do think that one of the things he does well is, in order for the growth to happen, it needs to be done on a larger level as a team, but also on a one-to-one level.
Yeah.
So I think that one of the things that great leaders do is really know the people that they're leading. This is why I hate when someone's like, I've got 150 people on my team. And I'm like, oh boy. Yeah. Hopefully their manager's above it. That's only like 10 people.
Yeah, right.
But you have to know people. You have to be able to know, like, I know Travis is working on this and I'm invested in him to help him grow, just like my teammates did for me. Mm-hmm. That's going to be important as a leader. So when we're tracking growth, yes, it's individual, but as a leader, you need to do that too, because your success, Ubuntu, is my success. Yeah. And I'm invested in you because it means that we will all rise together. And that's every single time. If we invest in each other, we will rise together and we'll often go much further than if we do it alone. And again, I think about, like Michael Jordan isn't Michael Jordan without his teammates, right? Yeah. Dennis Rodman and Scottie Pippen. And it's the same. He wouldn't have been that way without Phil Jackson. Phil Jackson's invested. So individuals are really important. Knowing their growth is really important. Knowing what they're working on and what they're developing in mastery. As a leader, also being so clear about your mission and vision and communicating that, and not just communicating it, but you live it every day. You're like, we're on this mission. You're doing a great job helping us with this. Yeah. And then also there's another piece too. I'm thinking that we haven't said the word vulnerability. And I want to say it before we end, because I think leaders who, and I'm not talking about like opening wide the vulnerability, but knowing, like, oh my
Let me tell
God,
you,
when I was 5, you don't need to be getting into any of that. You got to get yourself a therapist. But, I think as a leader, knowing that you too can receive feedback. Right. And I'm wondering if the person you worked with also was like, you know what, you're right. I could do that better or deliver this better, because it's Ubuntu. I'm trying to get better so that you can get better, so that we can get better. So if I'm only giving feedback and not receiving it, that's another thing. And I'm sure Phil Jackson got that from Michael Jordan saying like, hey, I think this play, okay, what do you think about this? But at the end of the day, he does make the decision, but he's getting input and collaboration.
Yeah. He's been super, super active about getting that feedback, right? At the end of the day, the term that I love, I was talking to one of the coaches I work with, is humble confidence, right? I know that ultimately I have to make the decision, and I have the humility to tap into my team, to tap into my coaches, to tap into my sport, to get feedback so that I can make the best decision. Right. So I have the confidence that I can make the decision. I have the humility to say that it doesn't mean I have all of the answers. That's why we need everybody to be a part of that process.
You said something really powerful about courage as a leader. And I want, I know we're towards the end. I want to end on that because I think was so well said. Because it is a challenge for a lot of leaders to have courage.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes. And something you said about getting feedback reminded me, I worked for, I think it was a manager I had at one time, and he used this tool, and I think it's great for coaches, and I think it's great for leaders because it's so difficult to give critical feedback based on the power dynamic. It's already difficult peer to peer, but now you put another level of authority for me to give critical feedback to someone who is hierarchically on top of me. That's really, really difficult. And as leaders and coaches, that's the position that we find ourselves in. So how do we get that feedback in a safe way? And the question that this manager used, he would bring us together and say, hey, what are some things that I do that make your job difficult? Right? Inviting that feedback. And if you do it enough and it's authentic and it's genuine, and what basically it's like a leader is asking, hey, I know I have blind spots. Will you help point them out to me? And it could be like, hey, I kind of feel like you micromanage me a little bit too often sometimes. You're always asking, oh, wow. Okay. Like if you're genuinely want that feedback, and the offering is, hey, I know that I can be difficult. Can you help point some of those difficulties out? It just, that vulnerability and that honesty just makes it maybe a little bit easier to get some of that feedback.
Oh, I like that. I'm going to write that down when we're done. But yeah, tell us about courage. Well, I know it's 1 minute. So the courage to be a leader that is visionary, that often isn't like, let's call it like a Ted Lasso, right?
Yeah,
or a Phil Jackson. In the beginning, it's a little weird. We're not really sure where he's going with this or where she's going with this. So tell us about the courage.
Yeah, I think it's the courage to be authentic, right? The courage to be the authentic version of yourself. And I think you and I both talked about, and I think Phil Jackson did this so well, is he was so woo-woo with some of the things that he brought to the locker room, which can be really scary as a leader to lean into that authenticity of who you are. It's that vulnerability. But if you trust, like, hey, this is who I am, and I can't predict how people are going to receive it, but hopefully the thing that they are going to receive is that this is my authentic self. And as we lean in, the courage to lean into our authenticity, I think it invites that connection from the people that we lead and work with. What about you?
Yes, I would say the last thing is just that the authenticity is that you have to show up as yourself with pluses and minuses, and then trust in yourself and have the courage to be yourself. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but you can't be anyone else. I did want to say, I do like this one. Caitlin has one good tip too, so we can end on that one. Something called culture carriers, where every other week people submit the individuals they think have demonstrated the values of the company. So that really leans into your team it's your team aspect that you ran today, even. What,
Right.
let's give shout outs, and how are people
Yeah.
demonstrating the
Yeah.
values of the company, which are really important. And it doesn't have to be every time we have an interaction with the CEO telling us what
Yeah.
what we're doing
Yeah.
wrong, right?
And so, so
Yeah.
it's recognizing the people that are actually, hey, we're doing things right. So let's recognize them, those culture carriers. I love it. Lane, authenticity is a superpower. It absolutely is. And thank you, Lane, Caitlin, everyone, for being here today. We've gone over our time, Myers. I didn't even get to notes, because like we could talk about this topic for like 6 hours and keep going. And Mari's cueing the music. Do you hear that? She's
And she's like, get out of here.
Iris, thanks so much. We'll have to do like parts 2, 3, 4, and 10 on
we do.
secret
We
sauce.
do.
Yeah.
Until next time.
Have an awesome one.
Bye.